No Future Part 3, as the title implies, is the third installment of the No Future saga, which is a little miniature series within the larger Titus Andronicus discography. No Future Parts 1 and 2 appear on the first record, The Airing of Grievances, and No Future Parts 4 and 5 appear on The Most Lamentable Tragedy, which is a rock opera we put out in 2015. But for the purposes of our discussion now, No Future Part 3, Escape from No Future, is the one on the monitor. So let's talk about that one. You know, not to get into a whole big thing about it, but the whole No Future saga is, my little series of songs where I kind of discuss my experiences with, what at the time I would have probably called like my melancholia or something, or my little blue devils or my depressive tendencies. Because at the time of writing the Monitor album, I didn't really have an understanding of my own bipolarity. We can get into that a lot more in 5 years when we do the 15th anniversary of the rock opera episode. But for now, I'll just say throughout my life, I just have had this long history with different kind of psychopharmacological drugs. Like they put me on Ritalin when I was a kid, when I was like, 5 or 6 or something, and they sent me off to this special school because I was such a problem child. And they sent me to all these different doctors and therapists and stuff, like to try and figure out why I was the way I was, why I was making so much trouble, why I couldn't behave, like why I wasn't doing good in the regular school, or like all this stuff. So I had a very short life before, the decision was made that there needed to be a medical intervention, which was putting me on Ritalin. Over the years, there's a long list of different drugs that they've given me to try and like make me a more productive, member of society. I used to look myself in the mirror at the end of every day, but I took the one thing that made me beautiful and I threw it away. Well, I was a river, I was a tall tree, I was a volcano, but now I'm asleep on top of a mountain. I've been covered in snow. So I surrendered what made me human, and all that I thought was true. And now there's a robot that lives in my brain and tells me what to do. Around the time that I started writing songs for the second Titus Andronicus album, even before I had hit on the whole Civil War thing of it all, I was kind of like, wrapping up my college career, or maybe I was like a junior at college or something, and just like very unhappy, like miserable, like absolutely hated my life, which makes a lot of sense in retrospect because, this college was, not the place for me. Like I had no friends. Like my classmates were the biggest bunch of fucking morons and assholes you could ever hate to meet. They had a lot of good, professors that taught me a lot of valuable things, but like, this environment was just like not conducive at all to me, like, having any kind of happiness or fulfillment. And everybody hated me. They all thought I was weird. They were exactly, the kind of fucking New Jersey bozos that I thought I was going to escape when I got out of high school. But, there they were anyway. And of course, there I was. And like I've been, troubled, tormented guy my entire life anyway. So eventually, I went to go see this doctor. And I told this guy, like, I'm pretty fucking miserable. Like, I'm a deeply unhappy person for the most part. And he's like, well, I'm going to give you this drug called Lexapro. And, we don't have to get into a big thing about it. That was not the right drug for me. But it was the drug that they gave me, and it was the drug that I took because I didn't know any better. That would come back to bite me in the ass, a few years later. And there's a whole other album about that. But for the purposes of our discussion about the Monitor, I went to this man, to this doctor with this problem that I had, which is that I was a very unhappy, miserable person. And he said, take this drug, this Lexapro, and, very possibly it'll make you feel better and you'll be happier. And I was like, well, that kind of sounds nice, I guess. So that's what I did. But as I, made the decision to go along with what he was suggesting, it gave me this feeling like I was like cheating or something, or I was like being somewhat inauthentic, or that I was like doing my authentic self, a disservice. This doctor tells me if I take this drug, then things are going to get better. I just wasn't completely convinced that that was like a good or fair thing for me to be doing, rightly or wrongly. It made me feel like a poser. It made me feel like kind of a sellout. It made me feel like I wasn't tough enough to feel the way that I was feeling and to deal with my life on its own terms. So I needed to take this drug to do for me what I couldn't do for myself, which was pull me out of the funk that I was in. And I'm not saying that that's right, that I felt that way. And I think that, there can be a lot of benefits to a lot of different kinds of medications and stuff. And I, continued to regulate my bipolarity with Lamictal nowadays. And if we go back to our thing about, the enemy's everywhere, right? So where's the enemy right now? For me, in No Future Part 3, the enemy is the part of myself that just can't get it together and just can't be happy for whatever reason. And I am going to combat this part of myself with the aid of this drug, this Lexapro. And, in the song I say, there's a robot that lives in my brain and he tells me what to do. That was my way of saying, I have forsworn trying to live as my authentic self. And I would prefer to be, a robot, to be an automaton. And just, if not actually be happy, at least numb myself through this drug to, the pain that I'm in and that I've been in for so long. And again, I'm not saying that I was right when I felt that way, but that was the way that I felt, or I felt it enough at that time that I wanted to make a song about it. You will always be alone. Again, I don't want to say kids at home, don't take your medicine because if you do, you're a poser. I'm definitely not saying that. If anything, I'm saying the opposite. There's so much of my work and my career, there are moments in life when you feel these things, and these are valid feelings, and they deserve to be validated through song. I would never tell a kid not to take their medicine. I think there are good medicines and there are bad medicines, depending on who you are and what your issue is. And it can be a long and difficult process to find the right medication for you. But I do think it's a worthwhile thing to do if that's something that you need to do. And it's something that I have needed to do. At the time when I started taking this Lexapro, this was the way I felt. Every record is just kind of like a snapshot of where you're at.